accomplish and focus on what we need to do to keep the momentum going. During this last year, we have been challenged, we have suffered, and we have faced unimaginable barriers. But during all of this, we have persisted. You all have persisted. Through the long, hard months of this pandemic, Rising Up has continued its critical mission of connecting youth to housing and services and changing lives. So far, as a part of this initiative, we've been able to help 289 young people find a pathway out of homelessness and towards independence. And we have opened the doors for hundreds more who are facing housing instability. In normal times, that would be a success. During a pandemic, it's a triumph. Thank you for carrying a vision for ending youth homelessness and for challenging our system to innovate and grow to meet the needs of young people. I know it hasn't been easy, especially as our entire homeless response system has been disrupted by COVID. When the pandemic arrived, so much of our world was upended. This includes our shelter system, which took a real hit. We lost over 70% of our shelter capacity. For those shelters that stayed open, daily operations suffered as we tried to figure out what it means to stay safe from COVID. Even the most basic questions, how do you keep people safe inside? How do you keep them inside during a pandemic? How much hand sanitizer do you need? How do we get people masks? Let's be honest, it was chaos, but we all worked through it. Additionally, with shelter in place orders, people weren't as able to offer up extra space in their apartments. Programs were struggling to continue their critical work while still social distancing, and people in housing were isolated and struggling with other challenges. Through our Emergency Operations Center, we started to take action and find ways to work even with these constraints. And I know our service providers did an incredible job in trying to meet our needs to help our most vulnerable with everything we could to support them. And I thank all of them for their commitment. I know our frontline workers were scared heading out in the world, especially in those early weeks and months, because many of us didn't know what this really meant, but they still did their jobs, and we appreciate that. That included supporting our shelter-in-place hotels. Since April, we've opened 25 hotels where people experiencing homelessness and who are vulnerable to COVID have been able to stay safe. While most of our shelter-in-place hotels residents are adults over 60, there are over 50 youth who are medically vulnerable to COVID that we've been able to support through the shelter-in-place hotel project. And though we are focused on moving people to permanent supportive housing from our hotels, because we know housing is how you end homelessness, we did get great news about our hotel program this past week. FEMA, under the Biden administration, has committed to funding 100% of the cost of our shelter-in-place hotels instead of just 75%, which was how it was before. And this is huge. It means we can continue to backfill our hotel rooms and get more COVID vulnerable people who are eligible under the program off the streets and potentially open up more hotel rooms. During the pandemic, we've also worked hard to sustain existing shelters for youth. We kept over 250 beds open during the pandemic, and in just a few weeks, we'll be opening up 888 Post Street, which will offer additional safe space for youth experiencing homelessness. Now, I'm excited to see 888 Post Street open. I remember we were standing there last January, Cheryl, and you were there in that big empty space announcing that this site would soon be a place where young people could seek refuge from the streets and get connected to services and job training. Though I know the amount of people who can stay there will be limited at first because of COVID, just think of the lives that will change because of that space. Another solution we came up with during this pandemic has been safe sleep sites where people who are unsheltered can have a safe space to put their tent and access services. We were careful to ensure connections with youth-serving organizations and to carve out some spots to support young people on the streets. Throughout all of this, we have had to stay creative. It has truly been an all hands on deck, and I thank everyone who has helped sustain us through these challenging times. Now, While we are still in the middle of this pandemic, we need to keep thinking about recovery. San Francisco, as we always talk about, we're a resilient city. We've been knocked down before, but I'm so hopeful for the future. One thing we need to do is build on what we've learned during COVID and come out stronger. This isn't just about homelessness, it's about everything we do. We've seen this city come together like never before to protect public health. And I want to see the same level of collaboration and focus as we tackle our city's biggest challenges. Now, the good news is when it comes to homelessness, we have a plan. We just need to deliver on it. As part of our homeless recovery plan, I've committed to creating at least 6,000 new placements over the next 2 years throughout the system, including the largest expansion of permanent supported housing in this city in over 20 years. This will help us to rehouse people from the shelter-in-place hotels while continuing to help people who are experiencing homelessness throughout the city. And I'll be blunt, this is an ambitious plan, and it's going to be hard. This will require us to be more efficient, effective, and collaborative more than we've ever been before. We will definitely adapt and learn as we go, but if we don't do this now, if we don't take aggressive action to change lives, and then what we see on our streets will continue, and we'll miss the chance of a lifetime. In order to pull this off, we will need every resource we have to meet this goal. This includes using federal resources to help prevent adults, families, and youth who are most at risk of becoming homeless in the first place. And we just announced yesterday the $26 million stimulus money the city is receiving to provide rental subsidies to those who could not pay their rent during this pandemic because they lost their job. We'll be using Prop C funding to invest in housing and services, provide service solutions for adults, youth, families, everything from problem solving to rapid rehousing to permanent supported housing. We'll be coordinating funds for behavioral health to mental health SF and the children, youth, and family system of care to create better connections, access sites, services, and treatment beds that can help people who are in crisis. And it requires all of you. As we recover from COVID, we will need all of you to help ensure that our solutions meet the needs of our young people who are struggling. The work of Rising Up shows us what works for youth and the potential these same solutions can have for everyone in our system. As we do the work, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what works, and we want to hear what we need to adjust to make it better. Rising Up is a strategic and cost-effective way of addressing youth homelessness. It represents change in how we solve problems. Rising Up has partners working together to make a greater impact on the system by connecting youth to housing and services, using strategies designed to truly meet the needs of youth. And I'll just tell you one story. When I was at a Larkin Street event and we were talking about Rising Up and making an announcement, I met one young woman who was homeless but was housed because of this program, and who also had dropped out of school. And since she's been a part of this program, it not only helped to support her housing, it has helped to support her in meeting her needs of tuition and other expenses in college. That's what your donations do. That's what your support does. The resources you provide to Rising Up, it helps change and save lives and provide opportunities that would never otherwise exist for these young people. We know that half the people experiencing homelessness in San Francisco first experienced homelessness before the age of 25. Think about that. Half of the people had their first experience with homelessness as a young person. If we can just get those young people now, before homelessness becomes a part of their life, and help them set their lives back on track, we can sow the seeds of real change for their future. And we know that homelessness in our city doesn't impact every community equally. For example, we sadly know that Black people are disproportionately overrepresented in our homeless population. This is very personal to me, and I'm working on addressing the root causes of poverty in our Black community in a number of ways. And I'm really glad that Rising Up exists and it's focused on equity. It's focused on delivering results by connecting youth to housing at the same rate they're experiencing homelessness. That's progress. And I'm glad the same attention is now being used to connect with our LGBTQ youth who also experience homelessness at higher rates. So look, we know Rising Up is impacting youth homelessness. We are starting to see change, but we also know that there are hills to climb. We have to stay focused on equality. We have to continue to push our behavioral health system and providers to get creative with us. The new dedicated behavioral health clinic and peer health navigator can help us better understand what it takes to support our youth with complex needs. We need to think regionally. We know that people experiencing homelessness don't stop at the borders between San Francisco and our neighboring Bay Area communities. We have to keep stretching our imagination on what it looks like to access housing for young people. We need to support strategies like shared housing that will help keep our youth housed and will help them thrive. We have to tell the stories of our success and how what we're doing here makes a difference. Our data can help us improve our program, but it can also help our community understand and participate in real life solutions. People are always talking about, well, what can I do? What can I do? This is what you can do. Whenever I'm asked by people who want to do something, funders who want to contribute, because nothing is more important to me than making sure that I help young people, because I think about the help that I received as a young person, and it was the difference between life and death for me. And so let's make the difference in the lives of these young people. This program is one of the most extraordinary programs we have in the city and county of San Francisco because of what it does to change and save lives. And I want to thank you all for being here, the work that you're doing, the support that you provided. Thank you for your commitment. The time is now to address this critical issue. Ending homelessness for young people in San Francisco is, of course, an incredible challenge, but it's one that we can meet. It is within our reach. And I look forward to discussing this with you as we move into the next section of this meeting. I'd love to hear from you about what you see as most important as we recover from COVID and we start to reopen our city and we get back to our lives and we can have these sorts of panels in person. Thank you all again so much for your work on ending youth homelessness and for joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. It was truly inspiring. So it is now time. We get very limited time with our mayor. She's so busy. So I'm just really going to open it up for questions that folks will have. And I think Kathie and I will share moderation, or Kathie will moderate. So if you'd like to ask a question, as Kathie said before, raise your hand or unmute or throw it in the chat.
Somebody must have a question. Jamel.
I'm just kind of curious as to what's your first point of contact? And do kids come in? Is there a list created of, I need housing, I need mental health, I need, a job? I mean, what's that contact and who's coordinating all that? I assume it's Larkin, but, how do you know how many people are still out there? How many youth are still out there?
I guess I'll take that one. So there are six access points for young people to come into or to have a chance to get connected to the youth homelessness response system. And those six access points are Larkin Street for 3rd Street Youth Center and Clinic, the LGBT Center, Lyric, Homeless Youth Alliance, and the Huckleberry Youth Program. So those are intentional access points so that young people who need to come, are needing services or needing support, need to be sort of assessed for what we call our coordinated entry system, can get connected. So Over the course of the pandemic, we have worked really well together so that folk, 3rd Street, I'm looking at Joy so she can join in. 3rd Street has been open the full time. Larkin Street's Engagement Center has been open, and other organizations then have been able to work with us as a part of those access points or at the Safe Sleeping site to be able to engage with young people. And then those young people are assessed if they're determined to be eligible sort of for rapid rehousing. If that's the right intervention for them, then we can connect them to Rising Up and rapid rehousing. If they need another form of housing, permanent supportive housing or transitional, then they can be connected to those supports. So the point of entry is intentionally diffused through the partners so that young people can go and connect with the place that makes most sense for them. Other questions specifically for the mayor? No question I would say is too, well, I'll let her decide if it's off the table, but I think regarding homelessness, opening up.
I have one.
Great.
Carolyn, hi. My name is Rachel Duden. I am I'm a program officer at the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation based in Baltimore. So calling you from very cold, snowy Baltimore City today. Thanks for taking the time, Mayor. I'm curious, as we are facing down budgetary restrictions locally, nationally, what do you see as the role of philanthropy for the next year to 3? How can philanthropy best support the city and supplement what is coming in through the government?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for asking that, because I think in one of the examples I used about the young lady without revealing her identity, city resources sometimes are challenging and can be restricted, but also in San Francisco, not only have we had to deal with a huge budget deficit, we have more budget constraints to come. And so what that means, sadly, is, sometimes a reduction in grant agreements, but the city's funds are also restricted. So in the case of this young lady, the reason why Larkin was able to help cover her tuition costs, her book costs, and some of the other kind of basic expenses like supplies for her home in which she stayed is because there were no restrictions with philanthropic dollars. And so I think that the role that philanthropy will play will be huge because there's so much more flexibility, because the city sometimes, unfortunately, yes, they'll cover housing and they have certain requirements and it just gets so complicated sometimes that it's difficult to help people as quickly as we'd like to help people, because the needs, when they come up, we can't say, well, come back a month later after we get our reimbursement check. They need money ready to go to meet the need when the need occurs. And, especially if, you're on the ground, a lot of kids who have been struggling with homelessness, sometimes for whatever reasons. I mean, I know Cheryl and I have been working together for so many years, and I remember one of the biggest challenges we had in one particular youth shelter was the need to have a little bit more monitoring and direct connection between the shelter and the community. And it took so long for us to get city funding to that program. We almost lost that battle with keeping that shelter open with the community, but Sherilyn was able to use her private dollars to help, continue to support that shelter and continue to keep it open and develop a better relationship for the community. And they've been very happy about what we've been able to do. It's going to be huge because our economies are struggling. In California in particular, the tax bases of, a lot of businesses are leaving. The taxes aren't going to be coming in as much as they had been before. And so we're going to see significant reductions in city resources. And so we're going to need philanthropy more than ever. And the flexibility it provides is invaluable.
Miriam, I think you had a question.
Yes, thanks, Kathie. Thank you, Mayor Breed, for being here. As part of the fundraising committee for Rising Up, one of the questions that we get asked regularly is, how are the funds from Prop C being allocated towards our homelessness community and challenges?
So thank you for that question, and thank you for all the work that you have been doing to support Rising Up. There is money specifically earmarked for youth homelessness. And so part of the plan that we have to address homelessness, where we're talking about 6,000 placements for those who are suffering on our streets, a lot of the resources from Prop C, our goal is to make sure that that goes into permanent housing, and in some instances, permanent supportive housing. That's going to be a very expensive undertaking. And so what it looks like is we're going to be covering the rent, either complete amounts of rent or partial amounts of rent. Our goal is to get people to be self-sufficient. I mean, in fact, this program, as I know you know, 5 people from this program are now paying their own rent and are in stable situations. You've been able to transition them out of the need for the subsidy. And I think part of our strategy around Prop C funding is, yes, there will be some people that we know will need support, maybe even for the rest of their lives, but there are others that we can hopefully transition into a little bit more permanent situation where they can take responsibility for the payments of their own rents. So a lot of the resources from Prop C, because as I'm sure you know, there are certain limitations to that, will hopefully be used to help us with the 6,000 slots that we want to create. Because especially the people that we have in about 2,500 rooms in San Francisco, once that FEMA funding runs out, we're going to need places for them to go. And part of our strategy is to use Prop C resources for permanent placements.
I have a question.
Yes, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Breed, for spending time with us today. I'm Paula Pretlow and am a trustee for the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation based here in the Bay Area. I'm curious about how you coordinate with other Bay Area cities and counties around the issue of youth homelessness, and what are some of the things on the table, and what are ways that we can help?
Well, thank you for the question, Paula. And I think, you know, there's this group of mayors of the large cities, and we are in constant communication. Our various city agencies from the counties that have the responsibility of addressing homelessness are in constant communication. And we talk about, you know, solutions. We talk about proposals. We work on advocacy efforts with the state and the federal government. And in fact, what's been really great about this collaborative is the work that, for example, the 13 big city mayors in the state of California, the advocacy that we've done has led to millions of additional dollars towards our cities to address issues around homelessness. I wouldn't say that we've been focused specifically on youth homelessness, because we have incorporated into our ask the need to support youth homelessness. That's just naturally been a part of the larger ask. But we are all coordinating, we're working together to try and address the situation. And more importantly, we're talking about housing and what we need to do to build housing throughout the region, and how we need to be collaborative. It does no one any good if one particular major city is creating all these incredible job opportunities where there's no housing opportunities attached to that, because guess where they're going to want to live? In San Francisco. And what happens then? Housing costs rise, and it makes it even more difficult to find housing opportunities, especially for young people who could barely afford to live here anyway. So we're definitely all in communication. We're working together, doing collaborative solutions, trying to support one another and also hold one another accountable. And it is definitely a thing that we enjoy doing the most. And we've seen some great victories in receiving additional funds as a result, including Project Home Key, the governor's program that provided opportunities for us to purchase properties as a result of this pandemic. We've already we're in the process of purchasing 2 buildings through this Project Home Key for a permanent location for those who are formerly homeless. So a lot of great things coming. Hopefully we'll see the difference in our streets where people are not, you know, where people are actually physically housed. That's my goal.
Mayor Breed, this is a question from Charles Lerner, who is the executive director of At the Crossroads. And it reads, any great city that has socioeconomic and cultural diversity in families, how do we get more people to return to the city, especially lower and middle income families, specifically families of color?
You know, that's a hard one, because I can just speak from even my own personal experience of having grown up in San Francisco. And a lot of my friends left the city for a number of reasons, but mostly because of the affordability. At the time, many of us had lived in affordable and low income housing. There sadly was a lot of violence, and these are friends who had children and they were concerned about their safety. And in other instances, like the public housing I lived in, it was torn down, 300 units and only 200 units built. So a lot of folks weren't able to come back. So a lot of reasons. And now I think the biggest issue is, because many of them still commute and they work in San Francisco, it's affordability and it's also space. And I think that's going to continue to be a challenge because San Francisco is a very, very expensive city. And I think about the fact that we have not done a good job of being more aggressive about building housing, which helps with affordability. And when you think about it, and one of the things I remember, I was in a forum and, I was supportive of Scott Wiener's bill. There was a Senate bill, A27, which provided additional density in communities. And there were a lot of folks on the West Side who were adamantly opposed. And the goal was not to tear down sound housing and to destroy neighborhoods in order to build high rises. It was to say, look, if there is an opportunity to build a 4 or even a 6-story unit, why not do it, right? If the opportunity exists. So I asked the audience, like, how many of you were born and raised in San Francisco? A bunch of hands go up. And how many of you raised your children in San Francisco? A bunch of hands go up. Well, how many of your children still live in San Francisco? And it's like, no hands go up because we're not creating the opportunities. We have to do a better job with moving a lot more aggressively, not destroying neighborhoods, not tearing down sound housing like they did in the redevelopment agency days, but just building more so that it's more affordable. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be very difficult to attract people to come back here unless there's those options and they can live a decent life without almost 70, 80, 90% of their money going to pay their mortgage or to pay their rent. So I think that's part of the solution, is to build more housing. And the other part is to get many of the companies that are here in San Francisco to recruit, to try and recruit people to come and work here, and to also incorporate housing opportunities in that recruitment process. So we are hopeful that many of the companies who are committed to San Francisco and who want to stay here will continue to work with us on some creative solutions to do just that.
Mm-hmm. This is a question from me. Do you feel hopeful about the new Biden-Harris administration?
I not only feel hopeful, I start to get emotional every time I think about it. And in fact, I'm so excited for the country and what this means for the country, because we have two not only smart and talented people, they are both good people. They're good people who care about the lives of other people. And that's what will make the difference in the decisions that they make to lead this country. We all know Kamala Harris. In fact, Jamel Perkins and I were introduced through Kamala. We all know the work that she did early on with Partners Ending Domestic Abuse to help address issues around domestic violence, in the Bay Area. That was her work. Her work was going after people who tried to go after the elderly. We remember when she served as a district attorney, it was about using the law to protect the most vulnerable from predators who would try to take advantage of them. That is her work. That is in her heart, that is in her mind, that is in every decision that she makes. And she's tough. which is, you know, a deadly but incredible combination. And Joe Biden is such a great person. His lifetime of service. I actually had a chance to meet his son, Bo, who passed away. And when I met Bo and had dinner with him and got a chance to get to know him, in my mind and in my heart, I was like, this guy can be president. And so it was so emotional to hear President Biden the day before he was swearing talk about his son Bo and saying it should have been him, and just thinking about what amazing people they are, how they care about other people, how they care about the country, and just what they're going to bring to the table. I'm so excited for the future of this country. And yes, it's going to be hard. And part of our responsibilities as citizens is to do our part to support and to uplift them. But also, I know that it's going to take them time to undo the mess that had been created over the past 4 years. And I know that is going to change, and it's going to be a lot of work, and we all have to do our part here on the ground to try to make sure that, you know, when we do receive additional help and support from this administration, that we're ready to implement it, we're ready to go, we get this vaccine out the door, we get people, you know, healthy, we keep people safe, we house people, we do all the things that will make for not just a better city, but will make it better for people's lives. And I think that's one of the most important things and the most exciting things about this new administration.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you have yes, we're all so excited. And thank you, Mayor, so much for your time. I know you have a hard stop at 12:45, as you have probably a few thousand other things that you are doing.
Yes, I'm going to be doing a talk too later, I think at 1:15 on the vaccine and answering people's questions, because there is, you know, look, I would just ask all of you to be understanding and patient. There is a lot of misinformation about the vaccine that's out there. And I'll just tell you quickly, for example, the private healthcare providers get their doses. We have absolutely no control over that, but we are trying to work with them and get them set up in locations and partner with them to get information. But the vaccines that we have, for example, the Department of Public Health received, pretty much every one of those vaccines are accounted for either, I think we're at about close to 20,000. We've gotten about a little bit over 40,000. We've gotten 20,000 out the door, maybe even more by this time. And most of those are for people who have appointments and then for the second dose. And in our healthcare network, the way that it works is we have to prioritize people in this tier 1A. And people are saying, well, why is Marin on teachers and San Francisco isn't? Well, the fact is we have like 210,000 people in that first network, which includes healthcare providers, people over 65, in-home support services workers, and we don't have control over all the vaccines that we get. It's making me a little crazy. And because the supply, even though there's 210 people in this first network, San Francisco has only gotten about 127,000 vaccines. And so if we're going to be able to vaccinate all of those people, we need a first and second dose. We need at least, 420,000 vaccines just for that first tier, which is why it's been hard to get to the next tier. And if we skip over people and we do things that are not appropriate, we put ourselves in a situation where we could compromise our supply because the state is being very strict and we have to track this. I mean, it's a whole thing. But anyway, I know I went off on a tangent. Just to say that I'm doing a talk at about 1:15 with the experts, the women who are leading this vaccination effort. Look, it's been a year now, and I know everyone's tired, but just give it a couple more months. We're going to be in a much better place. We made an announcement of a number of things opening today. You can go get your hair done starting Thursday. I'm getting my nails done this weekend. I'm super juiced about that. So let's not fall apart now. We are in a very good place. We got a lot of work to do. You all are doing some great work for what I think is, like I said, one of the best organizations we have. That's one of the most effective in delivering. And so I just really want to thank all of you for supporting Rising Up and everything that you will continue to do. And Miriam, we'll be at your house again, I'm hoping, after we're able to open up.
Absolutely, always open for you. And just want to thank you for your brave leadership through this process in these challenging times. Absolutely grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Everyone.
Thank you. Take
care. Bye.
Bye. And it looks like a lot of folks took the opportunity, so that's great. We can stay on if there's questions. We can close. If folks are interested in listening to the mayor, the 115 presentation or talk that the mayor referenced, I can forward that information to Kathie, and she can forward it out to all of you. I think it's a public. I got it like it's. I'm looking at Emily to confirm that I think it's available to anyone, because I got it like 10 times. So if people are interested in that, then that would be great. I know that vaccines are top of mind for everyone. So I'll open it up now to see if there are questions about Rising Up. Mark, it's good to see you. It's been forever. See if there's questions about Rising Up that myself or any of the lovely partners on the call can answer. Or we can wrap, so we can do whatever folks want, but I will just open it up to see if who might have questions for myself or the other partners on the call.
Okay, well, I guess if there are
no questions.
Yeah, it's fine. I will share. I was just on a call before this with Way Home America State of the Movement, which is really about how we're going to end youth homelessness it's the national movement to end youth homelessness. And a young person shared his thoughts about the word bold and what we all need to do, I think, to end youth homelessness, or ways that he's thinking about it. And since bold is a part of the Larkin Street mission, I was like, oh, I just really love this. And I loved him. But bold is to believe, to organize, meaning organize ourselves in the, bring together people, connect with others, whoever your your group is, your people are, to bring together in a movement to end. For him, we were talking about youth homelessness, to lead by example. And this was a call out. This Way Home America is about young people being leaders and providers, or what they call the older adult support, older adult providers. Lead by example, and to deliver. Deliver is to make it happen. So my call to action is to be bold in supporting young people, to be bold in supporting the idea and belief that we can end youth homelessness, and to continue to just move forward with that. I was so inspired by the mayor being so positive in the face of in the face of all the things that she has led us through and that we have all lived through over the past year. So be bold, be inspired, be positive, and join us in ending youth homelessness. And Miriam is going to close us out.
Thank you, Sherilyn. I don't think I can top that, honestly, but I think it was just so exciting to have Mayor Breed be part of this group and address some of our questions and concerns. But I want to thank you, Sherilyn, and all of our partners in the space for all you do for our homeless community and the young people. And I think one thing that the mayor said that's stayed with me is, if only we can get to the young people first. And that's exactly what Rising Up is all about. That's all about the work that you do on a daily basis and have been doing so well for so many years. So we are appreciative of that. Having boys of ages 21 and 19, I understand what their dreams and aspirations are and how we, parachute in on a daily basis to help them through the process. And these young people do not have those opportunities, do not have the guidance and mentorship. So we need to get to them first and early. We are just really grateful for a community like yourselves who support us and are able to be part of this community. We have these roundtables to be informative and educational, but we hope that you would consider responding to us as we follow up with emails or calls so that we could bring this initiative to closure, as we are very, very close, and continue to make a significant impact in the lives of these young adults. So I want to just thank you. And again, very fortunate to have a supportive community like yourselves. Thank you, Kathie, also for all your hard work through this and the committee.
Thanks all. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.